In the same way each candidate has their personal motives for standing, there are quite different reasons for choosing each constituency, and different reasons why the Greens think they're winnable. Waveney Valley is one of the rural constituencies. It's on the Suffolk-Norfolk border, about 90 minutes from London by train, and would take around 50 minutes to drive across, but has only 2 railway stations. The largest town is Diss, with a population around 9,500. The main opposition comes from Conservative Richard Rout.
It is a huge constituency and it's very rural. So there are only 2 places within the constituency that has a train station, which makes the kind of logistics of running a campaign here really quite hard. So it's beautiful, beautiful countryside. And what we're finding as well is that people here are very attached to their land, to their environment. They care a lot about it, and people are really angry at the kind of mismanagement, the river pollution, the air pollution, the building on precious land. It's all something that people here care about.
People just can't register for an NHS dentist. 1 in 4 are going without treatment. Some people have even resorted to pulling out their own teeth, or to having to drive 200 miles to an NHS dentist, or to paying money that they can't really afford for private dentistry. And so I've been really taking this issue up as one of the biggest issues locally, highlighting the root cause of the problem, which is that the government's dental contracts don't reflect the cost that dentists incur in doing charges. The dentist will be paid the same by the NHS for giving someone 6 fillings as they would for giving them 1. That's a practical, tangible thing that I'll take up to challenge the government on if I'm elected.
The Waveney Valley, it's a completely new constituency, but it's made out of parts that have been Conservative for decades. The Conservatives haven't really faced any opposition for a generation at least.
Labour and the Liberal Democrats are weak. Then Labour in particular are not strong in rural East Anglia, and they're focusing on other seats. They're not campaigning here. It's been MPs from just one party for as long as people can remember. But this time around, people have got an opportunity for a change.
Brighton Pavilion is on the southeast coast, an hour on the train from London. It encompasses what remains of the West Pier and the Royal Pavilion, former residence of Prince George, Crown Prince Regent in 1811. It also contains the University of Sussex and the University of Brighton. The main opposition comes from Labour's Tom Gray, a Mercury Prize winning musician.
There are a whole range of people living in Brighton Pavilion, and a big range of different areas as well. You've got the places near the seafront, they've got tourism going on there, they've got a lot of nightlife. You've got the areas of the city that were built in Regency times. So they're beautiful houses, don't get me wrong, but they are old and quite a lot of them are damp, and there's a lot of private renters and bad landlords in that area, as well as just gorgeous homes. And then you've got the areas that are more where the families live, the bigger Victorian houses, the areas that grew up around the railways, also the estates out towards the Big A Road, and those estates are built more at a different time. They're getting on a bit now as well. Like they're built around the same time I was, basically. So they're getting on a bit now. And when I knock on those doors, they have repair issues. They've got problems with damp and mould. Those homes need insulating. So there's different issues that get brought up in different parts of the city.
Understanding the constituency is one thing. The more formidable task facing Shan will be keeping the voters that Caroline won in the previous elections.
A majority of people have voted Green before, several times. So all those different types of people have different reasons for voting Green, for having appreciated the work that Caroline's done and different issues that they bring to me. But all of it's an absolute joy to knock on, to be honest. I've been a local councillor, I've been elected local councillor several times, but even there we didn't get above 50% of the vote. Caroline had more than 50% of the vote last time. So I'm knocking on doors where more than half of the voters voted Green last time, and that is quite the privilege, and it's really, really nice.
People here, they get the big issues, they understand climate change, they understand why the NHS isn't performing, they understand why there's a cost of living crisis, they worry about inequality. Sian is an incredible hard worker, she is tenacious, she will work, and as we get that across to people and show people who Sian is, and originally when Caroline announced that she would stand down, and people said, oh, you know, I don't know who Sian is, you know, and now we're seeing more and more people saying, I like what I've seen so far, so we'll keep at it.
Brighton Pavilion's been our only seat for quite some time now, so me holding this seat is absolutely imperative. You can't even think about not winning here. We have to win. We'll all do whatever it takes.
North Herefordshire is a largely rural constituency that would take an hour to cross by car. It contains several small towns, including Leominster and Ledbury. The main opposition comes from Conservative Bill Wiggins, who has been MP for Leominster since 2010. The three main planks of Ellie's campaign for North Herefordshire are renewing the economy, repairing public services, and restoring local rivers.
The rivers issue is something that people are very passionate about here in North Herefordshire. You know, we're recording this in Leominster. The River Lug goes through the town. It's been terribly polluted, largely through agricultural runoff, and particularly because of industrial poultry unit. And our MP has done nothing about it. So, you know, working on that is going to be an absolute top priority for me. Our health service is underfunded and understaffed. We've got a much older demographic than the national average here. Health services are really important to people, and working within the council, I've seen the devastating effect of the cuts to public services that we've seen since 2010. We spend so much of it, the vast majority of it, on the emergency care, that kind of ambulances at the bottom of the cliff. What about the preventive investment that stops people getting ill in the first place, that helps people stay healthy?
Head of Elections Chris Williams thinks Ellie would be ideal as an MP for North Herefordshire.
Incredibly personable. She's been on a very big tour of all the village halls in North Herefordshire and in the market towns, a huge rural constituency. When people get into a room with Ellie, they are converted. People come to those village hall tours, interested, curious, and they leave saying, let me help you, give me some leaflets. These are big rural constituencies. We know we can win them. We're managing it, but we do need help.
In North Herefordshire, we've grown and grown and grown over the last 10 years. What has often been thought of as a very traditionally Conservative area, and certainly at general elections it's voted that way, you know, pretty much since the year dot. But what we find is that when we campaign locally, and that is absolutely our strength, that really shifts. And in my ward, where I stood, you know, back in 2011, before I stood there, it voted 80% Conservative. And then by 2019, the second time I stood, it had shifted to 80% Green. And these days, there's so much disillusion in North Herefordshire among people who have traditionally voted Conservative. And they're really pleased to feel that there's this viable, strong, vibrant, exciting Green campaign. It's actually a very energising process, campaigning in a place like this, and feel really hopeful about it.
Bristol Central has an electorate of around 70,000 people. It contains several departments of Bristol University and several hospitals. The main opposition comes from Labour's Thangam Debonair. Notable landmarks are the thriving cultural centre of the Harbourside area and the Clifton Suspension Bridge, designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel.
Well, I'm standing in Bristol Central because it's where I live. I've lived here for about 14 years now. It's also where I've been a councillor since 2015. Although I'm not from here originally, I really fell in love with it. One of the reasons I fell in love with it is that Bristol has a really great history of doing things a bit differently. A lot of progressive and radical movements started in Bristol or the southwest. And I think the voters of Bristol have an appetite for a politician who's going to get elected and shake things up from the inside. In my ward, even though it is in many ways quite a privileged area, one of the areas where there is a little bit of deprivation is in housing. There's a lot of renters in my ward, and because it's a very overheated housing market, unfortunately there are some rogue landlords who leave their properties in a terrible state, and often young first-time renters at university, they don't know what their rights are, and so they don't know that they can complain. It is very satisfying when we're able to make contact with those residents and help them substantially improve their living situation and stand up for their own rights.
Bristol Central is winnable for a myriad of reasons. It's a new constituency. The Labour majority that the previous seat of Bristol West had is cut in half because of the new boundary changes. So we've got a smaller, greener area to cover.
In 2019, Labour won all 4 Bristol seats in the general election. On the doorstep, Labour's narrative is often, vote for us to keep the Tories out. But in Bristol West, the Tories came a poor third. And since the local elections of May 2024, the Greens considerably outnumber Labour on Bristol Council. Furthermore, within the newly created boundaries of Bristol Central, there are only Green wards, making that line difficult to justify.
We now have a very Green-leaning constituency with exclusively Green councillors. And again, we have a very educated electorate. They understand what the Keir Starmer Labour Party is standing for. They understand what Carla Denyer is standing for.
And we've got a fantastic candidate in Carla, who also has now significantly more national coverage because she is the leader of the Green Party of England and Wales. We're also, as a local party, the most organised we have ever been.
You know, people have got a lot going on in their lives. They often don't follow local politics very closely. So a lot of people we speak to on the doorstep are not aware of how strong the Greens already are in this area. In fact, I've got this stack of paperwork in front of me because we're going to go outdoor knocking straight after this interview. A lot of the people that live in Bristol Central now weren't even here in the last general election, or some of them weren't old enough to vote. So they don't know the political history in this area, and being able to show them that it's between Greens and Labour and that there's no possibility of the Conservatives being elected here really changes people's outlook, we find.
So the challenge, of course, is making sure that we can get all of that across, contact enough people, have face-to-face conversations with enough people, and get people's attention. If we get people's attention for a couple of minutes, we can potentially see a quite sizable swing this time around.